AC Wimmer, the editor-in-chief of our sister agency CNA Deutsch, joins us to discuss the new Cardinals and the Synod selections. Thank you so much for joining us, AC. Let's start with the Synod picks. Of the Americans chosen by Pope Francis, Cardinal Cupich and Cardinal Mueller are the most stark in their differences. Cardinal Cupich gave an interview this week asking questions about the role of women in liturgy, as well as about same-sex blessings, issues Cardinal Mueller has clearly opposed. What does this tell us about what we can expect from the October gathering?
Look, Montse, I think that's exactly the question we need to ask, looking at these two people. I've actually just filed a story on the interview and what in particular Cardinal Cupich was actually saying with diocesan German media, very carefully worded, I might add, about the German synodal way as well. And what you're seeing is that under the surface, where there's a lot of loquaciousness at the top, the same issues come to the boil, and they will have to be discussed at the Synod. They're not going to go away.
Absolutely not. Well, let's move on to the consistory in September. One of the most talked about picks is the new prefect of the Doctrine Dicastery, Cardinal-elect Fernandez, a close advisor of Pope Francis. His change of heart on the way he treated clergy abuse cases in Argentina has recently broken into secular media. What can you tell us about this?
There's been a lot of coverage about what he may have done, and there are a lot of concerns being raised by critics such as Bishop Accountability, as we've reported. But Montse, the other thing is that at the same time that the diocese has come out in defense of the former Archbishop of La Plata, Fernandez, you're seeing that he himself has said in an interview that he would not handle things the way that he did in the past. Perhaps a good clue about how this might progress is in the words of the Holy Father himself. He wrote a letter to Archbishop Fernandez when he was appointed to this important role, which is, after all, responsible for handling sexual abuse cases in the Vatican for the whole Catholic Church. And he said, let those things be handled by the relevant section. I want you, Archbishop Fernandez, Cardinal-elect Fernandez now, just a week later, I want you to focus on dogma and on theology. So perhaps that's the clue that we need to follow here, and we certainly will.
Where he's not necessarily the one that actually is hands-on these issues. You know, AC, earlier in this program, we discussed the troubles in Nigeria, and we know that there are big picks coming out of Africa. What can you tell us about the three African cardinals chosen, knowing that a lot of the time Africa gets touted as the future of the church?
Look, it sure does. And in terms of our work, we see this demographically, politically, geographically, in all sorts of ways. But when you look at the numbers appointed, critics might point quickly out that out of the 21 cardinals, there are only 3 Africans coming here. And that's not a lot when you have 9 from Europe, when you have 5 from the Americas, and 3 from Asia. But at the same time, those 3, in terms of what they represent, are very telling and interesting. So firstly, and perhaps most notably with regards to the classic factors about the future of the church, you have someone who was Archbishop Protase Rugambwa, who was working at the Vatican in the dicastery for evangelization. He's now in Tanzania in a metropolitan archdiocese that's very important in a country where the Catholic faith is flourishing and growing, where the kind of future can really be felt. I was talking to colleagues in Kenya, and they were saying it about their neighboring countries, that Tanzania is one of those countries where you can really sense that coming along. But the other 2 appointments are interesting as well. You've got Stephen Brisling in Cape Town. He's a white South African bishop who's much loved by all, irrespective of skin color or tribal or other heritage. In South Africa, he's an important voice for Southern Africa. That's geographically important. But he's also someone who's considered to build a pastoral and dogmatic bridge quite easily. And then you've got someone who's dealing with something that's very particular to Africa, the tribal issues. And that's, of course, Archbishop Stephen Ameyu Martin of Juba in South Sudan, who's seen some significant contradiction and protest and critics coming out to his appointment. But Pope Francis has gone ahead and affirmed that. And perhaps giving him the red hat now as a cardinal gives him a particular further edge and certainly a bit of more papal authority, if you like, that this is his bailiwick, this is his diocese, and that is the role that he has to play, crossing boundaries, crossing tribal issues and tensions.
Absolutely, and also dealing with interfaith dialogue, which moves us into some of the confusing comments for World Youth Day that have recently come from the soon-to-be Cardinal Americo Manuel Alves Aguiar of Lisbon. He has been quite outspoken on what we can expect from the gathering next month. What do you see there?
Look, I can see a bit of a theme happening here, Montse. Loquaciousness, and then the issue of what's actually underneath. So Cardinal-elect Aguiar has had to explain himself. He did so to the Portuguese language sister agency ACI Digital in a notable interview, because it was notable for the sort of things he's talking about, but what is he actually saying? What's actually coming to light? What's the clarification here? Well, we hear that fraternity means that you respect each other's difference and that we don't want to proselytize, that we don't want to bring people to Christ in that way for the youth, for World Youth Day. But when we look at what St. John Paul II said about the World Youth Day and its purpose, it is, of course, to bring people to Christ. And there's a tension here that needs, again, just like we've spoken about in the other topics, the Synod on synodality, the role of Archbishop Fernandez and the dicastery of faith, that needs clarifying, that will have to come out with more than just the wash, one might hope, as a Catholic, that will really show some results. In Lisbon, we will see these in only a few days' time when the World Youth Day kicks off.
Absolutely, and we know that interfaith dialogue does not mean watering down our faith and our principles. Well, one of the less talked about cardinal selections, really quick, is Archbishop Sa Yuan in Hong Kong, whose comments are confusing in how they might be interpreted to characterize the plight of someone like Jimmy Lai, the prominent Catholic media leader who is still in jail. What might this appointment signal to us?
Spot on. Yet another aspect of that theme. Is it appeasement? What is he talking about and what is he saying? Is there some sort of diplomatic effort underneath? We're going to have to find out, and we're going to watch it very closely in the coverage here on EWTN News. That's for sure, Montse.
Well, we'll be watching this closely indeed. Thank you so much, AC.
Much appreciated. God bless.